Chapter 7, Transport. Just if you go beyond 12:30, I've just made a 12:30 appointment, so one of you gets to cheer it up to that.
Phil's chomping at the bit.
I know. Jimmy is too.
Okay. Hi there. Hi, so most of you know I'm David Faulkner, and I've got Greg Bassam here, who's also a transport policy planner who's been assisting with this. So the transport chapter in phase 2 covers essentially what can occur or can't occur within road corridors and rail corridors and public pedestrian areas of the city. So we call that the transport zone. It's all public land, and we haven't there hasn't been too many changes since we last brought it to you in January. The change that was requested last time was that we make it clear that bus depots are not permitted in the rail corridor, so we have made amendment to the definition of transport infrastructure to exclude bus depots on outside of road reserve, so that they won't be permitted in the railway land. That's really the most change that's happened since then.
Would you like to go through your recommendations?
Sure.
So in 3 paragraphs, what are we doing in the transport chapter? Given that we've got a whole modal shift that we're trying to encourage, how does this help that?
So we're the transport zone is essentially saying that the transport corridors shall be for transport purposes. We're making it clear, we've called it a transport zone as opposed to what previously it was just called, there was a separate rail zone and a separate road zone, so we combined them together to say that this is a multimodal transport corridor, because we've obviously got cycleways down rail corridors now, and so we're saying this whole corridor is for transport purposes, and by doing that we're also trying to manage the use of surplus railway land, for example, which has been of some concern as to some of the activities that go in there. So we're saying no, this is for transport purposes, and anything else requires a consent in this. Is to enable the transport corridors to be used efficiently and safely.
The majority of the chapter went through as stage 1. All of this is a few more objectives, policies and rules to deal with what David's just talked about.
Yeah.
It's our desire to achieve modal shift.
No.
Right. Okay.
One thing I will bring to your attention, because I understand it was raised earlier today, was about cycle lanes and standards. So in the operative plan, in the road zone, which now has been replaced by this transport zone, there was standards in terms of how wide a road could be and whether you can put cycle lanes on a road. We've also got a whole lot of other standards around council, as you're probably aware. We've got the infrastructure design standards, which also has requirements for cycle lanes. We've got our cycle design guidelines, and we've got the major cycleway technical standards. There's a whole lot of international standards as well. If you're bored, you're more than happy to flip through them.
Do they all say the same thing, though, David?
Yeah, they all talk about that we want to provide cycle facilities on in appropriate locations on our key roads, and they talk about how wide they should be and so forth.
And are they consistent?
Yeah, yep.
You can't find anything nasty in any of them that somebody could drive a bulldozer over.
No, they have all been written. All our standards have been written in light of international best practice. The issue that we have, and I know the Noble subdivision was raised earlier, was that the operative plan was written in the early 90s. It had requirements for where cycle lanes should or shouldn't be. So it said on collector roads we didn't have to put cycle lanes in. Since the early 90s, best practices has evolved, and we're now saying yes, we do want to have cycle lanes on collector roads. the issue was with the Noble subdivision is we had
Don't go into the Noble subdivision.
No, well, yeah, I'll just...
We know it well, yeah.
We had our standards saying we want cycle lanes on collector roads, whereas our district plan was still stuck in when it was written in the early 90s, and it said we didn't need them. The district plan trumped these other guidelines, and so that's what won at the end of the day. What we're now suggesting is that we won't have those standards in the district plan, so that it doesn't trump the standards that we've written. And we don't want to put these in the district plan because these get updated regularly. I know the major cycleway technical standards came to you last month, and if we put them in the district plan, like what happened in the early 90s, it locks it in the district plan, and as standards change over time, we can't change them, and we get stuck with those situations.
So in terms of the transport stuff, I don't understand how we get, and maybe it's the subdivision stuff, we get those new design standards put in place. Is that effectively what we do? Yeah,
so these design standards are an infrastructure design standard.
Right.
Anyone who builds a road and wants to vest it in council needs to comply with this. And so that is the way we can require cycle lanes and so forth.
Do they just get a consent if they don't comply? Is that basically how it works? So if they've got an outline development plan that doesn't comply with our standards, or an outline development plan that was written 5 years ago, and we've updated our standards, what do they do?
Well, we can refuse to take that road over as a public road, so we can say that you can't vest that road as a council road. That's the way that that we control it through this standard. The issue with the previous approach is when we had this standard, we also had standards in the district plan that weren't aligned, is that they were saying, well, the district plan says we don't need to put cycle lanes in, and so that ended up trumping these standards, and that's how they got consent around it. Whereas if we don't put it in the district plan, that won't trump these standards.
So do we make it like a non-complying activity if it doesn't meet the design standards?
No, it's not mentioned in the district plan. So what happens is if they put a subdivision in, they build a road that doesn't comply with this, we can just simply say, well, we're not taking that road over as a council road. And this is pretty clear. So if a developer wants to build a road, they'll know that if they want to vest it in council, they need to comply with this.
And just the final question from me is on the transport corridor, particularly the railways. One thing that I've noticed is that it collects a huge amount of litter. Is there any requirement that we can put in here around the general state of how it should be kept?
No, that's not a district plan matter.
Yeah, it's up to the private, the landowner, which is QRL in this instance, to maintain their properties.
What is the history with regards to getting roads back? The developers developed, it's handed back to council. What's the history? Because we've got one I won't mention in our area some time ago that was taken back by council. It was deficient. So what is this? How strict are we on turning back to developers and saying, sorry, this actually was never built to their standards, it's your problem?
I'm not sure about the history of that, but we do have the legal ability to do that. We can also require that there's some funding arrangement that if we take it over, they must also give us funding to fix it up if they're not prepared to do it themselves. Yeah,
because I guess there are two questions. One you kind of semi-answered is, if we choose not to take it over,
yes,
what is the issue then? Because we've got a deficient subdivision with deficient roads which we don't want to touch, and what is if the developer walks away, what happens then? And secondly, does the money that we get from the developer more than cater, or would more than cater for the deficiencies? I mean, is there a calculation there?
It would be a negotiation on a case-by-case basis. So we would see how deficient the road is and would work out how much we need to to bring it up to standard, and that would be discussed with the developer. If a development sort of goes belly up, falls over in terms of funding, then obviously, I mean, that development will not be able to go ahead, and we just end up with a vacant piece of land, which in some cases there may be pressure for us to take it over by the residents in that area, and that's just something we have to deal with. Yeah.
So sorry, at what stage do we start working with the developer and would identify that issue? We've got no money, as a council, we've got to be very careful with the funds, so we've got to really preempt any issues. The idea is that we're building a city for the future. These are what these plans are for. Is this more of an operational that we should? Yeah. So okay, right, yeah.
Happy to have that discussion offline.
So just rather than calling it a transport zone, it's sort of like the previous road and rail and pedestrian, they're combined into the transport zone.
That's right.
So I'm assuming that although cycleways isn't in there, it's really pulling together what was in the previous plan.
Yeah.
Yes.
What you should have received in your transport chapter is the most of it is light grey, and that's what went through in stage 1.
And the turquoise
and it's
stuff,
only
which
where
is hard
it's
to
in
read at
black.
night, but never mind.
And it's only where it's in black.
Yep.
Those are the changes that
Yes.
that are being sought in stage 2.
Got that. Yep.
And that's how the notification will appear as well, so that people understand that what's greyed out, what's light grey, they can see the context of what's coming in stage 2, but you can't put a submission on it because it's already been.
I see.
Questions for anyone? No, I'll take that. So I'll move that. In fact, do I have a seconder? Seconded Paul. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed. Carried. Lunchtime. So I will see everyone back at